With extraordinarily awkward timing, the U.S. State Department announced December 7th that it'll host UNESCO's World Press Freedom Day event next year in Washington. The theme is 21st Century Media, New Frontiers and New Barriers. And what made the announcement awkward was that very same day in London, a thin, white-haired man was turning himself in to the Metropolitan Police to respond to questions having to do with alleged sexual assault. The high-profile attention to his subsequent arrest had less to do with the allegations than with his day job as the director of WikiLeaks, a web-based group that has released to newspapers tens of thousands of secret diplomatic cables from the State Department concerning countries from Canada to China and people from Vladimir Putin to Prince Andrew. Debates exploded since the release about the leaking, the cables, and what it all means for diplomacy, democracy, the media, and, yes, freedom of speech. On December 12th in New York, the Personal Democracy Forum hosted 2 all-star panels on those topics and more. Today we're going to bring you excerpts of that event. To kick off, press critic and professor of journalism at New York University, Jay Rosen, followed by Columbia University's Emily Bell, formerly online editor at The Guardian newspaper in the UK. If people with information are going to WikiLeaks, does it mean the Watchdog press is dead?
The sources are voting with their leaks. They're voting with their leaks, meaning if they trusted the newspapers more, they would do what sources have always done and go to the newspapers. So there is something about that promise. There's something about the offer that WikiLeaks extends to sources that is working, at least for some, because the organization has been flooded with stuff. They have more stuff than they can handle. In fact, their processing power hasn't kept up with the inflow of material from their sources, and they've had to shut down in order to handle what they have. So the sources are voting with their leaks. That they choose to go to WikiLeaks rather than newspapers tells us something about the newspapers. And I think what it is our watchdog press died. It died definitively under Bush, but even the illusion of it has died. That is, people don't see it as the check on power that it says it is. And it hasn't operated in such a way that it can be the check on power that it says it is. The massive increase in secrecy that we've seen in our government hasn't been matched by a massive increase in capacity in the watchdog press. So the watchdog press, as an idea that professional journalists will penetrate the secret world on our behalf and find out what's happening and come back and tell the world, that illusion died. It's not possible to believe in it anymore. But what is possible is a kind of distributed eye on power that would include the old press. And that's what we're seeing emerging with WikiLeaks.
The least useful debates in this, I think, is Julian Assange a journalist, and is this journalism? This is how information is going to be disclosed in the future. And if you're part of the ecosystem of disclosing and reporting information, which is journalism, then it's a fact. It sort of happens. It's not up for debate. And I think it's also reminded us of something else, which is really, really important. And I'm sorry, this is a very narrow perspective, because I'm really here just to talk about journalism, and I think everybody else speaks rather better about other aspects of this, which is we've been involved in an intense existential debate in journalism for the past 5 years, which is about profitability. And in fact, I've always felt that this was wrong, that the core purpose of journalism is not to make money, it is to effectively hold power to account. And what the last few months actually have shown us is that that core purpose and how we can do that accountably and responsibly, if it lays with the press, is really not about how to be most commercially successful. Because organisations which do not have a profit motive, or which do need other forms of funding other than advertising, are now doing a better job of disclosing information in a particular arena than much of the press. So what do we do about this? Obviously, I think that education generally has a role to play. This can't all be left on the shoulders of the frail and rather unimaginative press. But we do have to think about what the process is for the press of the 21st century, and I think that we have to think about, we've had a really sort of speedy tutorial about what a source might be in the 21st century. How do we protect that? How is disclosure likely to happen? And also, if you are an existing institution, I'm actually quite pleased the press hadn't sort of crumbled into the sand in the last 3 weeks, because I think we've seen the real power of organisations that have political capital to actually amplify these stories in a way that would have been very, very difficult if you hadn't had presences like The Guardian and El País and Le Monde and the New York Times behind them. But at the same time, I think Jay's point in the earlier session is a good one, which is that, you know, part of the reason for all of this is that the watchdog function, I don't think it's dead. I think it's wrong to say it's dead in many parts of the world where actually journalists risk their lives on a daily basis. I think it's been anaesthetised in the US. This is my perspective as an outsider. And I think that this is something of a shot of adrenaline to its heart, and hopefully it will now wake up and grab the reins.